Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Beyond Bold. It is your host, Kyla Bolden, and thank you so much for joining us today. I am so happy to be back behind the mic. Honestly, it's been a little bit of a hiatus, not that long, just about 2 months, a month and a half. And it's because this start of the year has been incredibly busy and unexpected for us founders, not just me, but a lot of my friends. And I wanted to get some really, really good guests on the podcast, especially friends who have run their own companies and that I have a relationship with. And just this year being so busy at the beginning, I wanted to give everyone time so I could get them all scheduled. So I'm super excited for the episodes I have coming up. We have a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of founders who have been running their business for a while and have experienced the ups and downs of entrepreneurships. And I am excited about all the advice and stories and learnings you could take from these upcoming episodes. And that brings us to today's episode with Blake, who is the founder and CEO of CISE, which is an impact-focused fashion house. I'm going to let him explain it, but I was super excited to have him on because he is not only an incredible founder, he is a friend, and it's been really great to watch him grow his business over the last year that I've known him. And I know this episode is going to bring you so much insight into the fashion industry and what it's taken to grow a business like Blake. So without further ado, let's hop into the episode. Well, Blake, thank you so much for joining me today on Beyond Bold. Blake is the founder and CEO of CISE, which is a fashion brand that has a really, really cool impact. I actually first remember seeing your bags that said "Protect Black Women." I was like, this is really, really cool. So we're definitely going to get into what the mission and everything is behind CISE. But I actually met you through a really cool fellowship that we did, the Cartier Women's Initiative. And you were one of the winners for the year before, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And Cartier is a really, really cool initiative. I definitely have talked about it on this podcast, but it has a group of founders who are running businesses that all have an impact and are all just like incredibly innovative. So I was really excited to meet Blake. And in today's podcast, we're going to talk a lot about him as an entrepreneur. We're going to talk about his business, but I always like to get started with the beginning. So I know you've had this business for a number of years. What was that like initial spark that made you want to start your company?
Right. So I've always created clothing since I was in high school. So back in 2010, I was doing a lot of clothing production and everything along there. But my ultimate goal was to make something that's creative and something that helps stand out and represent something. When I took a photography class in high school, I was really tied into the arts, but I used to make a lot of my own apparel. Fast forward to going to Howard University. When I was at Howard, I had my first clothing brand. And with the clothing brand, that was a way to speak out to other people, to be your own person, no matter what. And then fast forward, I started to produce as an agency. So a lot of organizations on campus were different fraternities, sororities, organizations. I created items for them to help represent them in a unique way. But I paused it with everything that was happening in the world. With George Floyd was a point in time that we wanted to adjust and change the dynamic of our business from an agency to be over to consumers again, to create apparel that gave back to the community around us, which is how we initially got started, was taking those like design aspects of when we were going out. And I saw a lot of people at protests, they had a lot of clothing and apparel and representation, but I wanted to have a meaningful way to leave legacy and impact within the community, to hold other people accountable while also being able to uplift and celebrate the community that's around us. So got started, fast forward, and the community has really got us to where we are to this day, which is really exciting.
And I know community is like a big part of what you do in your company. And before we actually get to like the community aspect, because you guys have been able to build like a really vibrant one, I just want to ask you the difference between like an agency and then I guess like maybe like a regular like traditional fashion house, because a lot of our listeners may not have that understanding? Because you said you started as an
Yeah.
agency and then moved into doing what you're doing now.
I think a big thing for me has always been to inspire people to do their own thing. The reality is a lot of me not have access to the resources to produce that style of clothing. That's when somebody like that's when somebody like an agency is somebody that would be able to connect with other people to be able to show the process of how they've been able to do that experience firsthand. And since I'm a business owner in the past, I've been able to create these garments, create these items as living proof of that. And I provided that to other individuals as like my forte instead of it being like a business saying, hey, here's my suppliers, here's how it is. You're going through the examples of educating people in that process while also being able to give people the ability to own their own IP with these processes.
That was a really great explanation. And I think, I don't know as much about the process of developing a fashion brand, but I know something I hear a lot about is finding reliable like factories to work with, and when you're beginning, having a minimum that like you can actually afford, because
Yeah.
that's a big thing too.
Yeah, ideally it would be ideally the agency would be an opportunity for people to help bring in a new stream of income for them. Let's say that you mentioned before that you don't necessarily have as much experience with a clothing brand. I would come in and I would help you build out a clothing brand for your business because that's something that you don't specialize in. That would be an extra stream of income that comes into it. However, what ultimately happened, and this is like the pivot, is that a lot of brands that I was working with, as beautiful as the garments would be and as amazing as the products would be, it wasn't the heart of a lot of the businesses I was working with. So, of the companies I was working with a grooming company. I helped them produce satin lined hoodies back in 2014. And with that, it was supposed to be these are hoodies that are protective hairstyling, and it's something that complements people that are there. But the heart of the business was grooming. And with grooming, they were able to sell the items and they were able to get like good feedback on it. However, when it came down to people coming back and saying that, oh, I don't know what the best sizing is for the hoodies, I don't know what fabric composition this is, and then you're looking at different stores that would stock these products, it got a little bit difficult trying to figure out how people would be able to be like more balanced in having that business through and through. So ideally, it would be something that would build out a new stream of income, but the businesses that I was working with were not at that capacity to branch out for another arm of their business per se, and it ended
Yeah.
up hurting the business long term instead of in being in a space of continuing to grow.
So it seems like you were working with businesses in which their clothing wasn't the main part of
Yeah.
their like revenue model. However, I think that's an incredible way to get traction at first. So I don't know if you always had the vision of creating your own brand, but a lot of times we as entrepreneurs get like blinded by this is what I ultimately
Yeah.
want. And then I'm sure you have so many friends like this. I do too. And then they just don't start because they're like, okay, I want this.
Yeah.
But I'm like, my thing is get traction by any means possible, right? Show credibility by any means possible. And that could be an email list, that could be like you doing what you want to do for other
Yeah.
people, which I think it's incredible because once you probably started to have your own designs and like your own brand, you were probably light years ahead and like have already like made the mistakes and figured out things if you would have just done that from the very, very
Yeah,
beginning.
exactly. And it's really exciting because you're now in a space of you're honestly working with other businesses to find in lifetime as a case study without being in
Hmm.
a without the expectation of a consumer holding you to the same regard as a company that's been in business as long. So working with a
Yes.
fraternity is really helpful because they need a shirt that might be for a community service event that represents the event
Hmm.
and it's for specific branding. However, if you're trying to get into different retailers, maybe the composition or the colors may be different than what the requirements are to actually be like in a stockist, which prohibits you or makes you have to throw away the design in entirety. So you're able to now say that we got the event for community service. After the community service event, people realize that the shirt is too thick and this is in the middle of summer, so now we have to find a more breathable material in live time instead of it being we release these shirts in the summer, we release these hoodies in the summer because we finally got the fit right, but people aren't buying it geographically because it doesn't make sense and now you're sitting on extra inventory. It works on as like a live case study, but in an honest way that is not being held to the same standard of some of these market requirements because that's a very big pain point that a lot of businesses have, especially with trying to go into retail. There's a requirement that you actually get penalized and fined if you don't meet them based on packaging, quality of product, customer returns, and the feedback that they have. So it helped really build out our life cycle of our products. It helps build out the quality, the fit, the cut to constantly evolve to what it is today.
Yeah. And so like I feel like your business probably had like two births and like a birth and then a
Yeah.
rebirth because you were doing this in the beginning with fraternities, business, etc. Take me from, you're doing B2B, and then you're like, okay, we're gonna have our first collection. What was that moment? What sparked that moment? And how was that
It's
journey?
all been based on emotion. I think that that's that's what it is, and I think that that's an accurate representation of the brand of where it is today. Is it's an emotional thing, right? Where we first started, I felt so hopeless when I first started the brand. I created Protect Black People when George Floyd was murdered, and I felt as if like I feel hopeless. I want to do this. I want to donate the proceeds. I do not care where people see us and like what we're doing. I just want to make impact. That was the business to consumer side. Then we created clothing, which was more so for mental health and awareness because I felt so hopeless in that. That was our first collection, which was just like apparel. But then we decided to create a handbag, and the handbag took off again. And there's just been different pockets that's been based on emotion. Then going back to the designing process, those are the statement bags and statement handbags, statement apparel for Protect Black People, Protect Black Women, Protect Black Kids. Then we created
Hmm.
our capsule collection, which is the CISE brand, which would be the backpacks, it would be the tote bags, it would be the duffel bags, anything that doesn't have any messaging that's on it, but it still represents the
Yeah.
company. And then now we're going into like building out different arms and branches again of individuals we work with because under the statement pieces, we have consumers, but then we have other companies that represent the branding of that business, which goes back
Hmm.
to business model. So, an example of that is like with Cartier. Cartier had a women's conference, and for the executive women leaders, they wanted to ultimately support us by purchasing Protect Black Women bags to give as corporate gifting structures to those that attended.
Oh,
That was
nice.
during that, and the concept was so interesting because like if some businesses work with you, they want to either do like a private label where they slap their logo on top of it.
Yeah.
Other people may just buy like units off the website and it's not a collaboration, but this was like thought out because it was like, all right, well, what shade of red is this going to be? Is this going to be like the actual Pantone color on it? Is this going to be an official Cartier collection and collaboration? And the answer to that was like, it's not because it was for the conference. The conference was an ancillary supportive group that was under the business that was there. However, the intention of it was it there. And the core intention
Mhm.
leads us to the principle of where it is. So now you have the statement bags that are making their pieces. The the signature collection with a capsule collection is now being able to be distributed to different retailers, but we're selling it as e-commerce on our site as business to consumer. But when you're looking at
Hmm.
a different retailer like a Nordstrom, Neiman Saks, any of those retailers, that will be the business to business model where you'd be able to like see in
Yeah.
that while we also are producing and working with other organizations that we love and adore, which would be like a community organization like Walk Good. We could be a sponsor from product sponsor to being a talent sponsor from that. It's just intention and community are big things for us that has led to
Mhm.
that business model and structure of it. So it's never been a question of can we partner together? It's really more so how we can partner together with companies that share the same ideologies. And it's so interesting because like a lot of the companies that we're in right now with the climate of the world, the climate is in a space where I think a lot of people are starting to see more of a brand's affinity for the decisions that they make internally and politically, as opposed to the actual business model of what the business serves, whether you're a beverage, a retailer, anything like that. And our business at its core has always been this is our viewpoint, this is our vantage point, this is what we think of things. It's always been the forefront.
Yeah. And I want to touch on something you said about emotion, like you're driven by emotion. It reminded me of, Bose. She was a real housewife, but she also is she was the CMO of Facebook or something or
Yeah.
Google. Have you heard of her? Yeah. She's really successful. She's done a lot of great things, and number one should not be that she's a housewife most recently, but she's she's really really successful. But I saw in an interview that said like all of her business decisions were made by like they were gut
Yeah.
decisions. They weren't like very strategic, and people look at their career and was like, hey, you moved from being the CMO of this big company to this big company to this big company. How like you are like so strategic, you're a mastermind. When she's like, no, like it really just was like a gut
Yeah.
feeling. Like something happened at this company where I was like, okay, like I need to do this more when it comes to impact, or do this
Exactly.
more when it comes to me feeling fulfilled. And then she made that decision, and it ended up being a brilliant decision. And even as business owners, I can think about so many things in my business, but I'm sure you can too. A lot of the big decisions we make, and a lot of like the best decisions we make that feel like in the outside so strategic and such a smart move, a lot of it's just like a gut
Yeah.
feeling. A lot of it's just like, or I'm tired of doing this. I
Yeah.
want to do this. Like it's sometimes I cannot even put the words behind why I want to change something up, but like I do, and it ends up working really, really
Yeah.
well. And it seems like you've been driven really by your heart when it comes to this business. And I think that's one of the reasons why your brand seems so authentic. We see a lot of brands out there that like preach that they are focused towards, helping this cause or making this impact or this change in the world. And sometimes it doesn't come across authentic. And then other times it seems like it's a marketing
Yeah.
gimmick. But for your company, it's always come across like so, so authentic. How how do you think you've been able to properly communicate that to your consumer? Because it's no question what your brand stands for when I like go on your social media and look on your website, etc. But it really does not come across as inauthentic. It comes across so authentically, and I wonder how you've been able to do that so masterfully.
I think it comes down to the measure of ROI and
Mm-hmm.
expectation of what the intention actually is, right? So for example, our business is very pro-black. We create clothing that says protect black people, protect black women, protect black kids. With that being said, we're a growing business. Most businesses are at any stage pretty vulnerable for the most part because it's like you're always
Yeah.
trying to solve a problem. And if it's a problem, that means something is at risk, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's a level of exploitation that will always be presented to somebody, and that to somebody who is vulnerable, people have a higher opportunity of saying yes to something because they are vulnerable. So, with
Mm-hmm.
our business being so pro-black, when things that happen, or even from a calendar year, Black History Month happens every year, Women's History Month happens every year, there are going to be corporations that reach out to us around that time to try to do things
Mm-hmm.
with us during that time. When I first started, I was surprised and I didn't really think about the timing as far as a brand. It might just be the middle of February and all of a sudden a brand wants to put together a campaign. I'm like, hey man, this large corporation wants to work with us. That's exciting. Whereas that's a sense of vulnerability that I couldn't see past the actual intention of why somebody wants to work with us
Hmm.
instead of it being like, hey, we're trying to get together a campaign because we didn't plan anything for Black History Month. And we
Yeah.
want the brand that's pro black to stamp us to say that this is okay. And it really comes down to being able to weed through that and weeding through the emotional aspect in terms of being realistic and saying, why is the brand working with us? There's ways to be able to identify if somebody is not aligned with the same intention on you. And that has been very key for us. And I've always grown up where my mom has told me who's not going to be my friend in like 5 years. And she's shooting for 100% at
Same.
like the I don't know how she's shooting for 100%. And I think that I've adapted that skill of being like, that doesn't sound about right. And there's also setting up
Hmm.
the thing where I'm also not going to position myself where I'm going to lose. So I think that opportunities are really great, and there are tons of opportunities that have been a once in a lifetime opportunity, but it might not be from the person that would make it worth it. And I never want to go
Yeah.
to sleep with like a guilty conscience of we took this because X, Y, and Z. I want it to be like this was the opportunity we took because I actually feel good about the opportunity. So with that being said, I always measure and have like a barometer as far as to what degree would I actually feel good about taking on an opportunity. Is that if a company wants to work with us for Black History Month and maybe their intentions are something like that, then no, I'm not going to work with them. However, it could be a
Hmm.
timing thing. Like we don't know. Like they put together this campaign and they are just really, really behind on planning. Okay, well, we're not going to do it for Black History Month. We might do it for the month of April. And that campaign is no
Yeah.
longer rushed out. Do you still want to do this campaign? They're like, yeah, we do. Well, now we know that the business might not actually have that intention on that. So I think that to me is being able to know and identify intention of what people have. So I've done a good job of being able to know how to ask for what I want, but also making sure I advocate for the people that I'm also asking things of. So, of the people that work for me, we ask for a certain scope for the business. I might come in and say, I need X, Y, and Z for the
Yeah.
business that I've been part of. Has been something that anything I've hired for has been something I've done. I've done all the graphic design, I've done all the web design, social media management, everything that's there. I've done it at one point, and then I've hired somebody to do
Hmm.
it. It's never been something that I hire somebody because I don't have time to do it. I will learn it
Hmm.
and do it with that person, or I'll learn it before. And then stuff is ever changing. Is that just because I've done it doesn't mean I know it? You now hire people with better skill sets and you work with people with better skill sets that then
Yeah.
benchmark to grow you to where you want to be.
You talked about social media just then, like, you knew how to do it. I think when it comes to like my business at all, I've done every single part. I was like in the classroom
Yeah.
teaching kids at the beginning, like everything, right? And now I don't do that, and I have other people who do
Yeah.
it. But I think that, the social media and the marketing aspect of it, or just like marketing branding aspect of it, is always so important for the founder to have like a clear understanding of how to communicate their
Yeah.
message properly, because that's everything. And just like looking at your social media is like you guys have over 100K
Yeah.
on Instagram, and you've been able to really, have a big audience and like have a big community that, follows you, understands you, and ultimately purchases from you. I am curious, how did you grow your social media channels? And was it something that, like, you had a little bit of followers, then one day a post went viral and then you got like 50K more? Or is it something that's been a slow growth over the time? Uh, just a little bit of insight about that. That will be helpful.
It's been interesting. We've like on a chart, it's like this.
Yeah.
So to be professional, it's like that. But as far as when we first started on Instagram, we were posting 3 to 5 times a week, something along those lines. And it was very challenging because we
Mhm.
didn't have a lot of content that came behind it. Any social media post that we would have, the visual aspect could be told so many different ways that we have an overall storyline, but there's a look and a brand and a feel that matches the branding
Mhm.
of CISE. And that could be
Yeah.
if we take a picture of somebody holding a bag with like a gradient background, that post could be as simple as 5 things to wear for fall, 5 things to wear with your favorite resort wear. It could be getting prepared for your favorite holiday or like drinks to wear with this outfit. Anything along those lines in that like measure, that would be that. That is that's gonna be in the space of being able to like grow and like get it to yourself. So we've been able to own that and tell pictures a million ways. When we were trying to build everything out with the brand, we actually got flagged for posting on social media because this was during the time of the election. And with the election, anything that was considered a special message was suppressed in terms of viewership. So a lot of our
This
traffic,
was
this was
2020.
2020. A lot of the suppression on that hurt the performance of the account, but a lot of celebrities had purchased the products and were posting us. So we got a community following from some of our first posters. Like the first person to ever work with our company was Ashley Blaine. She is an actress who went to Howard University, and Marseille Martin are two people that like posted, and those were
Yeah.
people that like their backing on their community goes beyond just them as actresses. It's like their social impact and stuff. Uh,
Can we dig into that slightly? Just because, so, I know you went to Howard. Was it something in which you reached out to somebody and they like reached out to them and you were able to get connected? Or was it organic? They just saw this
it was organic.
because,
Yeah, it was so organic. I've
yeah,
never met Ashley before, and seeing her post it was crazy. Marseille, I think that she's always been in the know of what's happening. I think it's been more when she was like building out her shows and stuff like that. Yara Shahidi is very outspoken for like the work that she did. But Marseille also
yeah.
has always been doing stuff behind the scenes as well. And I'm loving that she's getting exposure and like more like work on this stuff she's doing. But if you follow her journey, like it's always been something prevalent since 2020. Before 2020 with
Hmm.
our business is like she posted it, and that got the traction of it. As we started to build stuff out, when the election ended, we were able to run digital advertisements again and like post it. But all the stuff that we had that did not work well, we were able to like repackage it in a different way so that way it's telling a different
Hmm.
story. So we might find out that those 5 best fall outfits are nobody wants to see that. And then because nobody wanted to
Yeah.
see it, maybe it actually could have been here's pictures of some of our favorite photo shoots in 2020 that we loved
Hmm.
that we want to give to you guys again. And then that post might serve well. Or it might be comment your favorite post, comment your favorite photo shoot, or like tag the next person that's going to be in it
Yeah.
and be into a giveaway. So like constantly evolving it and adapting it. That really community involvement, there's like a certain story that everything that is going to stick with people. And that story could be told a
Hmm.
million different ways for the same exact thing. And the business inspiration that I've really been so obsessed with has been Apple. I really love Apple. It
Hmm.
really only has like 7 things on their site, but they've been able
Hmm.
to really just completely keep advertising it. And like my team has always been like, we need to release new products. We need to release this and all that. And I just look at Apple and like, Apple doesn't, they might come out with something every year, but the things that come out with aren't even crazy, like accessible at this point. It's like the Vision Pros. It's like people are not spending that. Regardless, they have computer, phone. Then it became like tablet, watch, and like everything on that.
Yeah.
Story that they're doing is that the iMessage is now a product, and something is a product in
Hmm.
itself. And they really did think about that. So when you're creating the handbag, is that aside from the handbag being like a handbag, put in your favorite color, change the materials, change the size of the bag, the actual functionality of it, the storytelling aspect of it, match it to the community that's actually supporting you and following it. And that is how we built it. Throughout the time, it's been so interesting though, because like we've actually lost followers throughout the process of growing. So we went from 0 to 60K, and then from 60K we were down to like 56, and then from 56 to 80 was pretty good.
Yeah.
Then from 80 to 100 it was like up and down. Then from 100 to 1
Uh-huh.
was really solid. And we've changed the structure of posting like 5 times a week, 7 times a week, 2 times a day. We've changed all of that to constantly adapt it to we've been at
Hmm.
156K. Then we purged a whole bunch of people that were like fake accounts. Then we got down to like 150K. So it's been up and down, but I think that the big thing to always measure is the community aspect of it, is like how receptive are people within the conversation. We just had a post that went semi-viral last week, and we did a follow-up to that post, and it tanked. And that post was like, it's an easy like lob to be able to be like, all right, you already
Yeah.
have all of this positive feedback. It's gonna be successful. Terrible. It was absolutely horrible. And I think
Hmm.
that constantly not seeing that as a point of defeat, just realizing like the story that was actually being told, the reason it didn't perform well, we may not know. We also might
Yeah.
watching an interview with the CEO of Instagram, and he was talking about like sometimes the algorithm works in your favor one time because you get lucky. And that's so
Yeah.
interesting because like that could have been an instance where we got lucky that one day and it just pushed us. And we could have just been on a streak where now we get pushed to a whole bunch of people, but it's constantly being
Hmm.
agile. And I think that no matter how many times they change the algorithm, they've changed it from carousels are now the new wave to do it to videos. You might have to take those 10 photos and make it into a little slideshow that is now video. Changing
Yeah.
that dynamic of being like, okay, well, the video looked very retro 2000s. So now you have to speed it up and
Hmm.
add some like lens flares. How can you tell that story?
Yeah.
And it all ties back to the ownership of us owning the photos, us owning that.
Hmm.
Now we're able to like say of that photo shoot we did back in 2020, because the look of it matches our branding, we can tell it in like a whole bunch of different ways, which is great.
What I'm hearing is like there's a compound effect, right? And I think that happens a lot in business where, you know, you're working hard, right? But like it's not like it's just like time plus effort equals
Yeah.
up. And it's really like time is important. Of course, effort is important, but it's the consistency of continuing to work at it and trying new things and innovating. A big part of business is networking. What is like one like quick networking tip that you would give to somebody who is specifically, I would say, more so in the fashion industry, because that's, you know, one of the things that you're expert at. Because I know a lot of these things are relationships.
I think a lot of it is also being present. I I think there's a lot of great advice out there, but sometimes people are trying to apply advice to them that's not really applicable to them. There are certain things that people can't give you advice on because they don't know the circumstances or the full story to give the advice on
Mm-hmm.
it. And what I want people to take away from that, even this conversation, is that what has worked for me has been to constantly be consistent, to be determined, and to be driven. There may be somebody who's like watching this and like, I too shall be determined and this will work out for me. And it might not. Like, you might have friends that are just going there that don't post consistently, don't post anything that's like structured, and it just works really well for them. It's being present in the time of saying that what works for me, what is going to be there, and being actually present to ask the right questions, do the right things to get to the next space in life. So consistency is really important, especially within fashion, being able to be present. So sometimes you have to go to these events, sometimes you have to work with other people, and it's just understanding. But your community around is going to help a lot, whether it's relationships and stuff like that, where a lot of the designers reach out to others for help. A lot of the designers also work next door to each other and work in the same
Yeah.
community and do all of that. but you got to be present. You can't be on autopilot. And I feel like there's a lot going on in the world to not be on autopilot. That a lot of people are on autopilot because we are in a very
Mhm.
interesting climate right now. But in order to succeed in the best and honest way possible, you got to be present.
Yeah, I think that's so important too because I know like sometimes when you even go to a networking event or like you reach out to somebody to ask them a question or whatever, it's really rare that you get what you're looking
Yeah,
for sometimes. Sometimes they might just like tell you what's been on their mind
yeah,
recently and
yeah.
they just want to talk, right? And like even when people come to us for advice, I always remind myself as a founder, like, think about who you're talking to. Think about, learn a little bit more about them before you're able to just give advice. Because I mean, I've had people that like I've gone to just like networking and they're giving me advice on how to raise capital. And because they're going through the first time they're raising capital. I've already raised capital so that I don't need your advice on that,
Yeah.
right? But like because you're assuming and you're not getting the chance to like be present and actually look at this person as a blank slate and then impart wisdom and advice and share things, everyone leaves that conversation being like, well, like that was not
Right.
helpful and it just doesn't create community.
Exactly.
I have two more questions for you. And like one of them is just like a kind of a quick fun question. I love to ask this. So
Yes.
celebrities. If you were, how you they have that question of like there's a round table of people living or dead, who would you want to be like at that table? The question that I love to ask is like if you were able to assemble a board, a hypothetical mythical board of people who you want to take like not just business advice for, but like they're like the board members of your life, like business advice for you as a founder, but also advice for you as a person. Who would like one of those five members be on that board?
One of them, uh, Kiki Palmer. I think that yeah, I think
Yes.
Kiki Palmer would be great. I think that she
Mm-hmm.
has the core of the heart of talent for like show presence. However, there's no question about like if she's great at business or has a job or like is always paid. So she's got it down, but like her intentions are never compromised with the work that she does.
Yes. Oh, I love Kiki Palmer. I feel like I want to put her on my board now
Yeah,
too.
yeah, I can't.
But
Yeah,
she's really yes, I know. I feel like I want to take it. But no, I love her and she's so confident in herself and I think that's one of the keys to business and she also is confident in part because she has the talent to back it
yeah,
up. But like I have no doubt that like if she was even less talented, she would still have that same belief in
yeah,
herself.
for sure.
And she's like clearly has worked on her craft. And she's also somebody who's had to find innovative ways to actually get where she wants to be because she talked about how she wasn't getting roles. And so she had to go on social media and make her own skits and do her own thing and how that helped her get roles. So she's really, really, really incredible. Real ones know. So I love that. That was a great answer. Okay, last question. If you had one piece of advice to impart on somebody who wants to go into or wants to start a company that's like in the same industry as you, right? What would that like one piece of advice? They know they want to start, they don't know where to go or maybe they do know where to go, but like if you were looking back at yourself several years ago, me and you have a lot in common in the sense that we started our businesses or at least started working on our businesses like years ago at this point, right?
Mhm.
So what is that piece of advice that you're like from all of my years of knowing this is something that I want to tell you? You'll put on the billboard. Mm-hmm.
Manage your expectations. I really want to say go and just do it, but I think
Yeah.
that manage your expectations is the best way because like I do believe people should just get started, but I also think that you need to just kind of like manage how you see certain things. And if you really
Yeah.
manage your expectations and know how to ask for the right things, your success rate goes up.
I love that. I love that. Thank you so much for joining me here today. Could you tell people where to find you and how they could connect with your brand?
Yes. So my brand is called CISE. You can find us at www.cise.store, CISE.store, or on Instagram. as CISE.store,
Mhm.
CISE.store. My personal is Blake Van Putten, BlakeVanPutten, on all channels as well. So happy to connect.
And yeah, and I will put this all in the show notes. And Blake also has a Substack on where he like posts videos, he writes articles, and he really, really does give like the insider scoop on what it means to run a company like his, as well as he talks to other founders. So I'm definitely going to put all of that information. He's a really, really good follow on Instagram, as well as Substack and YouTube, everything else. So definitely check it out. And thank you so much for joining us
Thank
today.
you.